In only Tony Ferguson fashion, he makes even his retirement completely unexpected and very creative. He put one glove down instead of both, and he, I guess, is half retiring. Only Tony Ferguson can half retire. I'm gonna miss him, man. I really am. But he needs to retire, right? That's 8 losses in a row. He broke the loss streak, which BJ Penn held with him. Tony had the lightweight streak for wins at 12 that was broken by Islam Makhachev, and now he has the record for most losses in a row in UFC history, in what could objectively be called the biggest fall from grace in UFC history. But if this is the most or the closest Tony Ferguson retirement we're gonna get, let's celebrate with this. Looking back at Tony Ferguson's career, I mean, there was like no other lightweight like him. A fighter who started in the welterweight division, knocking people out, won the Ultimate Fighter, came down to the lightweight division in a very creative style, beating some great fighters like Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, Rafael dos Anjos, and what is still today one of the best displays of cardio we've ever seen. The way he was able to fight RDA for 5 rounds in high elevation without gassing out at all, at a very fast pace, throwing out crazy techniques like spinning elbows, combinations with his elbows as well. That performance showed to everybody, okay, Tony Ferguson is elite. That was the fight. And I remember from then onward, it was always a conversation about who was truly the best lightweight in the world. Was it Tony Ferguson or was it Khabib Nurmagomedov? For many, many years, even though there were other champions at the time, so many people believed it was either Tony or Khabib that was truly the best lightweight. In scheduled fight after scheduled fight, we were going to see Tony versus Khabib, which still to this day goes down as the most anticipated fight in UFC history. 5 times they were supposed to fight each other. Khabib would pull out a couple times, Tony would pull out a couple times. The whole COVID thing also ruined their last scheduled fight, and Tony was brave enough to accept a short notice fight against Justin Gaethje, one of the most dangerous lightweights in the world. And for some reason, only Tony would know, he cut weight twice for the fight, lost it in dominating fashion, even though he almost knocked Justin Gaethje out in the second round, arguably was saved by the bell. That was the beginning of the end of the legend of Tony Ferguson. He didn't decline rapidly, but there was a steady decline after the Gaethje fight. He looked decent against Charles Oliveira, but was clearly outmatched. He looked worse in the Beneil Dariush fight, and just continued the decline afterward. And Tony is the fighter that just doesn't know when to quit. He's one of those kind of guys that's too tough for their own good. He had pride for being an old school fighter in the modern age, truly loved competition, and wanted to be the best fighter out there. He was the interim champion. At the time, he was beating the best lightweights out there. But the one thing, unfortunately, that has casted a shadow on his career was the fact that he never was able to get in there with Khabib, whether it was him pulling out or Khabib pulling out. Tony is one of the most exciting lightweights of all time, man. Prime El Kukui was unlike any other lightweight we've seen in the cage. Long, powerful jab, busting up opponents. I mean, he had a collage of terror of what he did to his opponents' faces, like Josh Thompson, Edson Barboza, Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, etc. I mean, these guys looked like they went through a horror movie with Tony, and it kind of was. That's what it was like fighting with this guy. Those huge hands from those jabs, busting them up, slicing elbows, one of the best elbow throwers we've ever seen in the sport. And it really helped him to have such long arms like that. Good body kicks, right front kicks to the body to push him away so he could work off his jab, combinations from both stances, throwing sand at his opponents. Only techniques that Tony Ferguson would use. Lifting his chin above punches like when he fought Kevin Lee instead of lowering his chin. The man fought his own way. He didn't have a basic or fundamental style, which also made him kind of hard to prepare for a lot of his opponents because nobody fought like him, so they couldn't spar with anybody that could replicate him. And when he was in his peak athleticism, the guy had an insane chin. He was quite fast, good balance, strong, powerful. Tony's athleticism carried him very far with that creative style because Tony did eat a lot of big shots throughout his career and didn't get knocked out. The only time he was ever knocked out was against Michael Chandler, the most powerful lightweight we've ever seen, and he only got knocked out when he was clearly way past his prime. When most fighters, when they reach that certain age or wear and tear, they get knocked out repeatedly. Tony got knocked out once in a fight that he was winning. In the first round of the Michael Chandler fight, Drop Chandler looked to be the better striker of the two, but Tony was always known for his gritty performances. Even back when he fought like Michael Johnson broke his arm with a kick, and Tony still fought his way throughout 3 rounds. Lando Venata coming up on short notice, a very tricky and unique style that Tony had no idea who this guy even was, came out there and almost knocked Tony out when he grabbed Tony's kick. Tony's other foot slipped and he got head kicked. But Tony was still able to come back in that fight, rock Lando Venata, and eventually get him into a Darce choke. And Tony Ferguson's Darce choke was extraordinary. Still to this day, the speed of which he got Edson Barboza in a Darce choke was insane. If you want to see how fast a fighter can get a Darce choke on an opponent, look at Tony Ferguson submitting Edson Barboza. He really and truly had to work his way to the top. I mean, to get a 12-win streak without ever fighting for the undisputed title is insanity. And Tony's always been a favorite of mine. I've always loved watching him fight. I've been talking about him for a long time, man. I mean, I first got put onto Tony Ferguson when he knocked out Kakuno. Kakuno didn't have much defense, but Tony did knock him out badly with a right hand. That was the first time I knew, okay, this Tony Ferguson guy's pretty good. So thank you, Tony Ferguson, for the amazing career. And if you do decide to officially retire, I wish for you and your family all the best. Rest well in retirement, enjoy it, and I can't wait to see what you do next in your career.